She wasn't born into royalty, nor did she grow up with wealth, armies, or status. She was simply an orphan raised far from home, living as a foreigner in a powerful empire. Yet even in obscurity, she was being positioned by God for a purpose she could not see. While kings drank from golden cups and nobles schemed behind palace walls, a silent and unseen battle was forming. It would not be fought with swords or military strength, but with fasting, faith, and the courage to speak when silence meant death. Esther was about to step into a destiny far greater than she ever imagined. King Xerxes ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia, commanding the most powerful empire of his time. To display his greatness, he hosted a massive 180-day feast, drawing nobles and military leaders from every corner of his kingdom. Gold cups overflowed with wine, and the palace glittered with wealth. After the grand celebration, the king opened the gates to all of Susa for a 7-day banquet. Wine flowed freely with no restrictions, and music filled the royal garden. Meanwhile, Queen Vashti held her own feast for the women inside the palace. On the final day, when Xerxes was swollen with pride and wine, he demanded that Vashti appear before the guests wearing her royal crown. He wanted to display her beauty to a crowd of drunken men, treating her like an object for entertainment. Vashti refused, choosing dignity over the king's pride. Xerxes was furious and humiliated by Vashti's refusal. He consulted his advisors, who warned that her defiance might inspire all women in the empire to dishonor their husbands. Following their counsel, the king issued a decree dethroning Vashti and commanding that every man should rule his household. Time passed, and Xerxes' anger faded, but Vashti's absence lingered in his thoughts. His advisors suggested a solution: bring beautiful young women from every province, prepare them for the king, and let him choose a new queen. Messengers traveled across 127 provinces, gathering virgins from India to Ethiopia for the king's inspection. Among these women was Hadassah, known by her Persian name Esther, a young Jewish orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai. Mordecai had taught her to fear God, keep her identity hidden, and prepare her for a purpose she could not yet see. Esther's humility, grace, and inner strength immediately set her apart from the other candidates. After 12 months of preparation, Esther entered the king's presence and captivated him with her quiet dignity. Xerxes loved her more than all the other women and crowned her queen in Vashti's place. A royal banquet was held in her honor, and gifts were sent across the empire, but no one knew the secret of her identity or God's hand guiding her. Meanwhile, Mordecai, stationed at the king's gate, overheard a plot by 2 eunuchs to assassinate Xerxes. He immediately sent word to Esther, who risked her life to warn the king. The conspirators were exposed and executed, saving the king, though Mordecai received no recognition at that time. Soon after, Haman the Agagite was promoted to the highest rank among Xerxes' officials, demanding that all bow before him. Mordecai refused, inciting Haman's burning hatred. Learning that Mordecai was Jewish, Haman plotted not only to destroy him, but to annihilate all Jews in the empire. Casting lots Purim to choose the day of destruction, Mordecai mourned openly, tearing his clothes and putting on sackcloth and ashes as he wept through the streets of Susa. Esther, learning of his grief, was urged to intervene with the king despite the law that forbade approaching him uninvited. After 3 days of fasting and prayer with the Jewish community, Esther courageously resolved, "If I perish, I perish," preparing to risk her life for her people. Dressed in her royal robes, Esther approached Xerxes, who extended the golden scepter and spared her life. She invited the king and Haman to a banquet she had prepared, carefully observing and waiting for the right moment to speak. Xerxes, intrigued, agreed to attend a second banquet the next day. At the second banquet, Esther revealed Haman's plot, pleading for her life and the lives of her people. Enraged, the king demanded the identity of the villain, and Esther pointed directly to Haman. Haman, terrified, fell upon Esther in desperation, only to be seized by the king's guards and hanged on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. After Haman's death, King Xerxes gave his estate to Esther, who appointed Mordecai over it, placing the king's signet ring in his hand. But the original decree to destroy the Jews could not be revoked, so Esther petitioned for a new law granting the Jews the right to defend themselves. Mordecai acted swiftly, and a day of doom turned into a day of victory. On that appointed day, the Jews rose in unity, protected by royal authority, and defeated their enemies across the empire. In Susa alone, 75,000 adversaries were struck down, while the Jews took no plunder, fighting solely for survival. What was meant for destruction became salvation, establishing the festival of Purim to remember God's deliverance. Mordecai was honored throughout the empire, second only to King Xerxes. Yet his greatness came not from power, but from his devotion to justice and the welfare of his people. Although God's name is never mentioned in the book of Esther, his guidance is evident in every event, every risk, and every reversal. What was intended for evil, God turned into salvation. Esther's story reminds us that even when God seems silent, he is never absent. Courage, faith, and obedience can change the course of nations and the lives of countless people. Perhaps, like Esther, you are in a place for such a time as this, chosen, positioned, and called for a purpose only God can accomplish.